Alright, so first thing we're gonna do today is ignore my hair, because I'm very upset about it. It's too long, and I just do not have the $30 to get it cut. I've actually had to have my family bail me out a couple times this month, because, for those who don't know, I moved into this apartment recently, and this apartment is part of what I get through disability, SSI. I signed up on a housing list a long time ago, like a year ago or something, and this is provided for me through that system with reduced rent, heavily reduced rent, so I can actually afford it. But with that, SSI was supposed to increase my income to the full amount, because when you are on SSI and you receive any kind of assistance from anyone, that they dock your pay. They literally punish you for getting help. So I was not making the full amount. I was making like 2/3 of the full amount. And then they were supposed to increase that when I moved, because that's not enough, and they did not do that. So also I'm figuring out how to fucking pay bills and shit, and I guess I paid my electric bill twice this month, which I don't know, because I don't know how shit works, so, yeah. Or rather, they removed the amount before the date it was due, which was next month. Anyway, God, you don't care about that. I don't care about that either, honestly. Point is, I can't afford a haircut right now, so I'm miserable. I tried everything. It looks worse with the hat, believe it or not. So we're doing this, and I feel so good. Yeah, I don't know. So that's the first thing we're doing today. Second thing we're doing today is not having a plan for this video, because this is one of the if I don't film I go crazy videos. What I am doing also, there should be no children watching this video. Avert your eyes and leave, please. That's a general thing for my channel, by the way. This is not a child-safe channel. Not that I talk about anything like really horrible, and I try to keep gratuitous content to a minimum. Like if I talk about anything, adults, I try to be respectful about it. I try to be, I'm not, but also, kids should not be watching this channel. So I went to Pride a couple days ago, and I had a meltdown in the corner. And while I was there, I sketched this lovely random trans woman. She might be trans Jesus, we don't know. But I'm gonna color that today, which is gonna be interesting because I don't have my glasses on and I don't have my contacts. My contacts. I don't know why I sometimes have a weird drawl. So I am blind. With my glasses, I am blind, and without my glasses, I am blind. I cannot see very well at all. But I also hate how my glasses make me look on camera, and also, I think being able to see my reflection in the camera actually makes me a worse YouTuber. So, not that I'm an official YouTuber or anything anyway. So this is interesting because this is where I have to be to see what I'm doing. That's like to color this, I have to be like here. For reference, with my glasses, just for shits and giggles, I have to be here still to see what I'm doing. Here I can barely see anything. So even with my glasses, it's not great. So so I might be down here. Who knows? Or I'll come back up to talk. Who knows? I hope you can hear me. Hopefully. If not, well, this is a great video then, huh? So,
So I talked a lot about Pride in my stupid video.
I do not know why that video is getting views, by the way. The one with the really really fucking shitty thumbnail, with spaghetti on the front. That actually, people actually watch that video. I'm like, why? Don't, please.
That was not intent. That
I mean, it went up, so you can watch anything that goes up. But also, dear God, why?
I just wanted to talk to myself, man. But I talked a lot about Pride. I didn't mention a few things, which one of them is kind of why I had the meltdown that I fucking.
I sat in the corner like a depressed 5-year-old and ate a fucking peanut butter sandwich and cried, which is very funny. But
So I am discovering that. Not am discovering. I have known that I live in an area.
I don't like that I'm doing it this way. You know what? Here's an interesting thing. Let's do it from far away where I literally can't see and see what happens. That'll be fun. That's a fun experiment. Also, I'm thirsty. The reason I had my silly little meltdown, there's different vendors at the Pride event. Different like resources for queer people. And there was one of the resources that I was trying to sign up for. And while I was doing it, so boy, I don't even know where to begin with this. I have some fears about privacy. I mean, maybe you've noticed that on the channel when I've talked, because I just randomly am like, I don't know what kind of information will get me doxxed. And it's like the most mundane shit, like, the first name of the postman who delivers my mail, which, literally, who could glean anything from that? It's shit like that where I'm freaking out over nothing. But I have some issues with privacy because of an episode I had of, it's a fucking whole thing. I don't want to fucking talk about it. So since then, I don't know how to talk about shit, man. I don't know how to talk about shit. Since then I've had since I had a kind of freak out with like privacy shit. I have had some issues with like when I have to like you know, I can't think, man. I can't fucking think. This is a terrible idea. This is a terrible idea. I want to stop the video and stop recording. And also, I kind of made a promise to myself not to do that, because then I just keep redoing things over and over again. So, man, mental illness sucks. Mental illness sucks. I've been really struggling with a lot. I don't know, man. Basically, to sum it up, at the event, the email that I have not been able to legally change my name yet. That's a whole ass process that I just haven't had the time, energy, or money for, frankly, at the moment. So my dead name is still attached to the email that I have to use for like signing up for anything that, you know, has to do with anything official or whatever. Which sucks, you know, because it sucks to, you know, anytime, you know, you're interacting with anyone on the phone, any kind of government people, or any kind of just you know, any kind of process that needs your information, like your name and your birthday and all that shit. You know, I have to give my dead name, and have to use the email for my dead name. Is my phone ringing? Where is my phone? Oh, it's in my pocket. Do I? Okay, no, that's fine. Sorry, I thought someone was calling me. But you know, you have to give, you know, your information, and it sucks, you know, because you have to. It's kind of a hassle for the person on the other end of the phone to be like, or in person or wherever you are, to be like, okay, call me this name, but in everything you're entering on your computer, you have to do this other name, completely different name. You will know me for 15 minutes of your life, and I need you to know me by two names and only use one verbally and the other one in the system. You know, that's kind of a lot to ask of a random person, even if they're trying to be respectful, even if they're actively wanting to be respectful of your name, because I have run into that where it's like, you know, they are trying, they want to be respectful, they want to be helpful, but it's kind of complicated, and it sucks just having to acknowledge your dead name, right? And so, unfortunately, at the event, I was trying to get access to this resource that was being offered, that could help me basically with my situation, and I had to give, you know, dead name information, and you know, it's painful. It is actively painful as a trans person to have to kind of be like, yeah, this is the name that I don't go by anymore, and I need to give you this information for this thing. It's honestly dehumanizing, and it's not anyone's fault. You know, it's not the person who was asking for that information, who needed that information. You know, it's not their fault. They're not in charge of the legal system. So, you know, but it hurts to have to do that. So I was kind of panicking already about both of those things, and then this person, you know, I think the area I live in is just very uneducated about queer stuff. And it's not everywhere. There are people who are educated. I have run into groups and people that do know what they're talking about, and are more kind of, you know, up to date on the science of being queer and trans and all that shit. I say science, but it's also just like the fucking, you know, the shit you need to know, social fucking, I don't know. There's a word for it. I don't have it right now. But I do find that there are a lot of people who kind of just don't, this area is, the overall area where I live is heavily conservative, heavily phobic. And it was great that our Pride event, there was a lot of people there. There was a lot of different stalls, a lot of supporters, a lot of cool shit happening. And also, this person who was trying to help me out, she was trying to be nice. She also, you know, I don't know. She was trying to help me out, but at one point in the conversation, I was talking about like, oh, okay, here's my dead name. You have to have that. Please don't use it. You know. And her response was, and she was trying to be kind, right? Like she was attempting to be kind. But she was like, you should embrace your dead name, or you should learn to love your dead name or accept it or something. And I get that she was trying to be kind, and also it's not the thing to say to a trans person at all in any way, especially at Pride, where in theory that's supposed to be a safe place for me to just be trans and not have to deal with that bullshit. And I know she was trying to be kind, and it was a comment out of ignorance, right? Not out of malice. And both of those things can cause damage, unfortunately. But there is a difference, it does make a difference, because, the guy who was running around with a megaphone that I talked about in that last video, who was, screaming, repent, 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 don't take the mark of the beast, like, just random fucking, you're sinful, your identity is a sin, blah, 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 just saying all sorts of heinous shit, some of which I can't remember. That's malice, right? That's malice, and that does harm, but also the other shit does harm too, the ignorance at an event that is for queer people. And I ended up not being able to finish signing up because I just kind of panicked, and I had to bail, and I think she was not happy with me, which also felt great. She didn't say anything mean or anything, but just the way she kind of walked off was, I don't know, whatever. It's fine. I'm also overly sensitive sometimes, to be honest. But, it sucks to go and have to, go to Pride, an event for, the joy in being queer, the joy in being trans and all that shit. And, I don't know. It was hard, and so, I had kind of a meltdown in the corner. And spent, honestly, the majority of the day kind of far away from my friends, because I had to go off in a corner and cry about it. And they didn't really know where I was, and then I was trying to find them, and I don't know, so. It was good in a lot of ways, just seeing so many flags and seeing all that. And then also it's like, I don't know. It just starts to feel like there's nowhere where I fit, there's nowhere I fit in. Even my friends have had a very different experience of being queer than I have. And it's not to disrespect them or anything. They're good people. They're kind people. But I think queerness for them has been, I don't know how to say this, and I don't want to misspeak, because they are my friends, and I do care about them, and the last thing I want to do is just fucking badmouth people that I like to the internet, you know what I mean? And none of this is meant to be bad-mouthing or anything along those lines. And sometimes I don't trust myself with how I phrase things, that like I think people are going to respond way worse to what I'm saying when it's like, no, you actually explained yourself fine and people are fine or whatever. So I can't see my, like, so the way my vision works is like I see like shadows like of I see in the webcam thing, I see like a big pale thing that's my fucking face, and then like various shadows, and I'm like, I have a feeling my hair looks like shit and I can't do shit about it because I can't see it, and even if I could see it, it wouldn't help because I spent so long in front of the fucking mirror trying to fucking fix it and it didn't work. So it's just gonna look terrible and I'm just gonna fucking deal with that. Anyway. So I want to be careful in how I say this, but I think for a lot of them, queerness has been. I don't like how I'm talking about this already. I mean, the group I'm a part of is more of like a. Apparently, I can't talk in color at the same time. Actually, apparently that's just something I can't fucking do. It's not that it's not about identity for them. Obviously, it is about identity for them. It's about identity for all of us. And saying it's not about identity is a disservice to their identities and their journey with their identities. And I also have not been friends with them long. I have not been there in the, the dark times they spent alone, trying to evaluate and trying to, doing the same thing we've all done, like trying to come to terms with who you are. Because who you are is not accepted by the world around you. So, we've all gone through that struggle and all come out of it differently, come out of it with different understandings of it, different understandings of the world around us, and how to engage with our own identities. But I've noticed that when we kind of, I feel very isolated in my own understanding of my identity and my own reality of my identity. Excuse me. I feel like for some of them, their engagement with queerness and queer groups is more political than anything. And that's not to say that it's not real to them. It's not saying they're doing this for a political reason. Like, I'm choosing to be queer for political reasons. That's not at all what I'm saying in any way. But the way that they choose to engage with, like, groups and stuff tends to be more, we're doing this event to raise awareness. We're doing this event to, for this charity or something. And all of these are good things. All of these are excellent, wonderful things that our community needs. Awareness. I literally just said that education is a huge problem in this area. So how do you fix education? Awareness. None of this is to disparage any of them. Obviously, it should be obvious. But my identity with my queerness and being trans, I feel like I've had a different experience than a lot of people have had. I feel very isolated when I talk to other queer people my age or a little younger, especially a little younger, which most of the people in the group are. I believe I'm the oldest one in the group, not by much. I'm turning 30 this year. Most of them are mid-20s. So it's not by much. I think the biggest age gap is only, 4 years, 5 maybe. So it's, I'm the oldest, but not by much. And yet, I feel like my experience of my queerness aligns much more with someone who is much older than me, a queer or trans person that is maybe 5, 6, 7 years older than me. Which is weirdly isolating. It's something that I feel like they, and again, I want to be careful what I'm saying because I don't know their personal struggles. I don't know, you know, I've not been with them the nights they've spent alone crying about the isolation they've felt about being queer or trans or whatever. Um, you know, and also, you know, some of the times I've talked to them, like there's this one trans girl, I really like her. She's really cool. Um, she's hella busy all the time. She works a lot, and so she's just hella busy. But she's wonderful, very sweet, very friendly. She's offered to give me a ride this week to a trans event if she can make it. She might not be able to, but because she is so busy. But you know, I really like her, and she's been really kind, really helpful. She helped me get some stuff over to this place when I really needed it last minute. So really wonderful person. And the little bit I've talked to her about her journey is like she kind of hit a point where she just couldn't take it anymore, and so she just like kind of took hormones. Like I guess she hit a point of like realizing and then kind of not snapping, but like just like I can't take this anymore, and just had to take hormones and transitioned pretty quietly without a lot of people knowing. And you know, it has been very happy ever since, you know. And that's not to say she didn't struggle, obviously. Again, we've talked a few times about her journey with it. I did not get to hear about, you know, everything, all parts of that story. I got the short version, and I recognize that. And I don't want to compare. This shouldn't be about comparing experiences. That's not what I want it to be about. And maybe what this comes down to is just jealousy, you know. Maybe what this comes down to is that she was able to kind of hit that point, hit that realization, and then very quickly do something about it. Whereas I've had to fight for a long time, and even now, you know, I'm terrified about starting testosterone, because it's a ticking time bomb of when people in my life find out. Some people know, my siblings know, they're very supportive, very encouraging. You know, I don't know how those changes are going to affect me. I don't know how I'm going to look. I don't know how I'm going to sound. I don't know if I'm still going to be able to sing, which is something that is very important to me, weirdly, oddly, for some reason. It's something that gives me a lot of anxiety. You know, I'm very grateful to my family and my parents for recently, you know, being able to financially bail me out, because if they hadn't, I might not have electricity this month, or, you know, or internet, which is, you know, definitely a need in today's society. We need internet. Some people can survive without it, but it's very difficult. You know, there's a lot of resources, you know, emails and stuff that can only be accessed through the internet. And it is a need, so, you know, but I gotta pay for that too. So, man, what was I originally saying? I've completely lost track of what I was saying. What a disaster, man. This is a disaster. I feel very isolated. I feel like, you know, even within my own queer group, queer peers, you know, I feel like I don't belong for various reasons. You know, they've all got They've all got work. They've all got, their own lives. They've all got their own, and it's difficult to feel like I fit in anywhere with them, which is extremely discouraging, It's extremely discouraging and extremely isolating. They're very invested in kind of, doing events, doing, group things, doing stuff for charity, stuff for various things, various support networks for queer people, which is all very important. And if we didn't have that, there would be nothing for us. They're invested in very important work for our community, very important work. And I'm not saying I'm not discrediting that at all. I'm not trying to say that that's not vital, especially right now where people are lacking education and resources and all that shit. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure how I'm feeling. I'm not sure what's leading to the feelings of isolation, if I'm honest. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why I feel like I can't relate with their experience of their identities. I feel like my fight for my identity has maybe carried a lot more blood than it tends to for the younger generation. And again, even that doesn't feel right to say, because that feels like it invalidates the younger generation's experience of queerness. And I never want to say I have it harder than younger queer people. I think that mentality leads to more dissension and more divides than I'd want to see, in the community. I think one of the worst things that has happened socially in the queer community has been the divide between the older queer experience and the younger queer experience. I think that's done a lot of damage. This idea, because language has changed a lot over time. There's people who, were queer back in the 70s or whatever, or even longer ago, or possibly even more recently. I don't know. I'm really bad with timelines to be honest. So any date I say, just take that as loosely as you possibly fucking can. But where a person who might today, with today's understanding and today's language, might call themselves a trans man, back then called themselves butch. And not that butch is still used, but I'm saying language has evolved over time. Our understanding of our own communities have evolved over time. There was a certain flexibility back then that we don't have now. And that flexibility arose from the fact that there was so little education and there was so little representation that, most of queerness happened in cloistered groups that kind of developed their own kind of societies and understandings. And there were things obviously that pervaded through everything, but it was, it was almost like this, a long time ago, it was more of an underground network than anything. Nowadays it is more of a movement. It is more of a, we are talked about in open spaces. negatively, in a lot of ways, especially recently. But there's conversation, there's definitions, there's delineations. There are new, terms being coined and used, old terms being shifted and changed. Some terms fading out completely. Some customs, fading out. It's changed a lot. It's very different. It's changing a lot. And there's a part of me that wishes we had more of that flexibility again. And it's, it depends on where you are. It depends on the people you're around. But I think queerness is supposed to be flexible. It's supposed, because the whole idea of being queer is you are outside of the societal norm of gender and sexuality. Excuse me. And the obviously, the idea that the norm is being straight and cis, there are problems with that. But we also have to recognize the world we live in right now, where cis, straight, identifying people do greatly outnumber us. We are a minority still. So it's complicated, right? There's so much complication to it. There's a lot of nuance to these conversations, and I don't want to speak as if there's not nuance, because there is. But I think, the flexibility of the labels and the identities underneath, the umbrella, I think, has always felt like a type of freedom to me. Kind of being able to be free with the language of, like I identify as bisexual. Someone could say that the way I describe my bisexuality is more aligns with pansexual, because again, getting into definitions, technically, people often say bisexual is being attracted to two or more genders, and often people talk about bisexuality as you do feel different types of attraction between the genders that you are attracted to. Like it's all sexual, romantic, and all that shit, but there is some kind of difference, and that has been my experience, that I am attracted to all genders, but I do feel it does feel different between the different genders. Whereas someone who's pansexual, how they usually say it is attracted to people regardless of gender. So they feel that their attraction is a little more based on person to person, and gender is more of a secondary concept in that. Whereas I feel like when people talk about bisexual, it's a little more, gender feels a little more important to that identity. I don't really like how I said that, but that's the best way I can phrase it for now. And some people might, I don't know. And also, it's like you get to decide your own label. Okay, other people can't decide the label for you. Only an asshole would be like, "Oh, you're bisexual? No, you're pansexual." Like that's an asshole thing to say. But it's like, okay, I'm bisexual, but I also like being able to just say like I'm gay, right? Like gay being an umbrella term as well. And I feel like in certain areas and in certain spaces, because, and I think the reason for this is because right now the majority of conversations surrounding us have been heavily political, because there are a lot of people trying to erase us, and so we've had to delve into definitions. We've had to become a little more particular when we're talking about things, because our environment has kind of forced us to, unfortunately. And also, don't take me as saying, man, it was so much better, back when there was like AIDS, and all that shit. Like, don't hear that. I'm not saying that. it was so much better when there was less dialogue around this, and it was so much better when there was more ignorance and, you know, we had less resources. That was definitely better. That's not what I'm saying. But, you know, I think there has been kind of this divide, and sometimes antagonistic attitudes that I see. You know, from, you know, sometimes there's argument over like terminology. Like there's, you know, for a while queer was a slur, and it still can be used as a slur by, you know, the wrong people in the wrong way. It definitely can still be a slur. And also a lot of us are trying to reclaim that, or have reclaimed. I think we've kind of successfully reclaimed that. I think a lot of us can say queer without it being a problem. And I like the term queer a lot because it's a nice umbrella term. You know, queer can mean literally anything in the LGBTQ plus spectrum. Anything under that umbrella can be a queer queer identity. I was gonna say a queer identity. And I also like that term because I think it also kind of describes another element of the experience, is just feeling out of place, feeling weird, feeling separate, feeling different, feeling ostracized, isolated. You know, queer a long time ago, you know, just meant weird before it was attached to any kind of sexuality or gender definition. And I like how it also kind of encompasses that feeling. So I really like the term queer. And that is something that over time we have reached, I think, a point where most people consider it reclaimed. Again, can still be used as a slur, but I don't know. Just, you know, I've talked about this sometimes where, you know, when I was younger, and I feel like this is something that a lot of, you know, like Gen Z and Gen Alpha maybe didn't experience as much. It probably also depends on the area you grow up in. I am largely talking about America, and even within America, I'm sure there's places that this, you know, again, it's highly varied and nuanced depending on where you grew up and what your experience was. But, you know, I remember being younger and the term lesbian or gay itself, the way it was used, was almost a slur. You know, I was called a lesbian when I was very young, before I had any idea what anything was. Which I do find amusing because it's like, I talked in my last video about how wow, I just blanked. Just lost my mind. About how sometimes people can just kind of notice something's different about you. That is just like weird pack mentalities and, you know, the societies we grow up in. You know, hatred is learned. I believe ignorance is learned. Ironically, ignorance is learned. I think. You know, I don't think it's something that naturally biologically exists, but I do think that, you know, hatred can be learned from a very young age, because you learn from your environment. You know, people talk about nature versus nurture. It's both. It's very much both. But if I had to say my opinion is nurture is maybe the greater percentage of that, I think. You will emulate the beliefs that you grow up around. You will internalize those from a very young age, and you know, children will spot the ones that, don't fit in, and it's subconscious. Like I said in the other video, it kind of it festers and grows in the back of your mind where you don't see it, and where you can't recognize it, especially when you're young and you can't recognize your parents' internal biases that they've unknowingly passed to you, because it happens to all of us. Which is why it's so important to start young with your kids when you're talking about queer positivity, any kind of helping your children grow to be empathetic, kind people, teaching them about various human experiences that they won't understand unless you talk to them about it, or unless they meet someone that fits within that demographic. And that's really rolling the dice, so you do, as a parent, have to kind of start those conversations yourself. I can't remember what I was talking about. I don't know. I've just been feeling very isolated. Very isolated. Pride was good. It was encouraging in a lot of ways, and it was also, I don't know. It's really dumb, but I'm still really sad about it's really dumb. But I'm still really sad about the Tumblr I deleted last year for dumb reasons. Because that was kind of the place where I had been rejoicing in my identity, and rejoicing in, the discovery of being trans. And it was heavily like, I've talked about this a little bit, but the show Our Flag Means Death was kind of a a fan blog of that. I mean, it was also just kind of my own thing, but it was kind of a lot about that show, because that show, I feel like, was one of the most crucial shows for me in understanding my identity and understanding how I related to my own queerness. It solidified a lot of recognizing myself as trans, as a trans man. I already knew I was trans before watching it, and I was already very solid in my identity of that. But representation is so important. It's so important. Why am I crying about this? Don't cry about this. Oh my God. Representation is vital. It's fucking vital. If you do not have a community that is queer positive, or positive in the ways that you need it to be for whatever identity you align with, if you do not have friends, parents, other family members, members of your community who are loudly and directly supportive of that, it's very isolating. and you often can't even learn about others who are like you or understand certain nuances of your own experience. You know, a lot of my own understanding of my queerness and identity came from media. I think the first piece of media that really struck me in this way was actually Yuri on Ice, which is an anime. If people don't know, it's an anime about men's figure skating and the relationship between a young man and his coach. And you know, I remember that was kind of the first example of queer media that I both watched, because if I'm completely honest, up until I found that show, I was still very queerphobic. Like I knew I was bisexual, but I also had grown up in a environment that taught me that being bisexual was a sin, being queer in any way was a sin, and I actually avoided a lot of queer media for a long time because you know, I believed watching that stuff was wrong. I believed that stuff was wrong and that depictions of it were wrong. So I avoided anything queer for a very long time. At least anything outright queer. And Yuri on Ice, I believe Yuri on Ice was the first piece of queer media that I was like, this is openly queer, and I'm going to watch this. Because technically, Revolutionary Girl Utena was probably the first piece of queer media I saw, because I didn't recognize it as such when I watched it. Somehow. For those who've seen that, no, I don't know how I avoided recognizing that. but okay. That's funny. But Yuri on Ice, I remember seeing it, like, it, you know, it was coming out, and I was like, you know, there was that thing in my head of like, oh, I shouldn't watch this as gay. And then I was like, wait a minute, I've come to terms with being bisexual. Therefore, come to terms that obviously I hadn't. Clearly I hadn't. But, you know, I was like, you know, I guess I'll give this a shot. And I remember watching it and feeling like, the way I put it into words back then was, you know, this is like an example of the type of relationship, the type of dynamic that I would want. I would want. It felt so much closer than anything else I had seen before. You know, any straight pairing or any you know, any other pairing I'd seen. And I didn't realize at the time that a lot of the reason for that was because it was two men, and I'm a queer man. I didn't realize I was trans at the time, and I didn't realize that part of the reason it resonated with me so much was because I do identify as a man, and then up until then I, you know, assumed I was a woman, and, you know, kind of, it's complicated. I'm trying to explain something that's a little complicated, because it's like, as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized some things that I thought were true back then and then weren't, so I don't know. Sometimes we do not know our own brains. Sometimes we do not understand our own brains and what we're doing as we're doing them, which is deeply frustrating. It's deeply frustrating to not know your own fucking brain. Try as I might. But I didn't realize that part of the reason I connected with it so much was because I you know, I do identify as a man. And I didn't understand that why that show felt so important to me at the time was due to that, you know, due to my own masculine identity that I hadn't figured out yet. It's also funny that I didn't figure it out yet, because I also did have I had some friends who also liked the show at the time, and all of us, including me, would joke that I was like one of the other male characters that was like younger in that show, and it's like, I still didn't figure it out. I still didn't figure out I was fucking trans, which is really funny. you know. So that was the first one, and then Our Flag Means Death, came. I watched that after I already knew that I was trans, and that was also, an extremely that show also aligns with a lot of my experience in other ways. And the thing that both of those pieces of media have in common, Yuri on Ice and Our Flag Means Death, is the queerness in those shows is not, what's the word for it? It's normalized. In both of those shows, nobody bats an eye at anyone being queer. Nobody is freaked out. There's no homophobia written into it. It's just like, yeah, two men fell in love. That happens. That's, we're not gonna make a fucking big deal about it. It's so rare to see that. It's so rare to see that in queer media. And I think there is some discussion sometimes where some people are like, yes, all queer media should be that way. There shouldn't be any homophobia or transphobia. Like, if we can't have that in real life, we should have that in our media. This full acceptance of our identities. Can't we live this escapism? Or can't we get the escapism? Can't we get to the escapism of not being oppressed in our media? Which is a valid opinion. I also see people say, well, it kind of helps me work through my own experiences with homophobia and transphobia and queerphobia in general, to see that depicted in the media I'm engaging with. That kind of helps me process it, and still, still have the story be triumphant. The girl gets the girl, or the boy gets the boy, or the trans person transitions, or whatever happens in that story. I think both are valid takes, and both have their place. But it is nice to just have a piece of media where you can see yourself, and then nobody in the story is nobody in the story denies your existence or your identity. I'm gonna loosely get into spoilers for both shows, very loosely. I'm not talking super in depth. But if you care about any kind of spoilers, maybe don't watch the rest of the video. But in Yuri on Ice, I've been watching it recently, actually. I haven't finished it. I'm like 2 episodes away, and I'm doing the thing I always do where I'm like, I'm 2 episodes away from finishing this, and suddenly I've lost interest. Because that's totally what that is, and not something else going on. God, I fucking hate my hair. I can't even fucking see it, and I'm making it fucking worse. Because I don't fucking know how to fix it. In that show, they also, to be fair with Yuri on Ice, they can't explicitly say what's happening, because Japan. Not that America is much better, but they can't explicitly say what's happening. But there are engagement rings involved, technically, engagement rings. It's there is a kiss between the two men, and these things are not, they're not considered weird in any way. They're allowed to be themselves in their identity, and they're just allowed to be, and I didn't realize at the time why that was so important to me, and then Our Flag Means Death happened, and it's like, also you know, two men fall in love and there's never this moment of, you know, that can't happen. That's not possible. Men can't fall in love with each other. There's never that just doesn't exist. There is a little bit of homophobia written into the show, a trace of it. But it also plays out very much as this specific character I'm talking about. It plays out very much as this character has his own queer feelings he's wrestling with, which causes him to be a bit of a dick fuck to the others. You know, there's something about casual queerness being depicted in media. You know, of just the acceptance. And I also think that does more good, you know, for people. I do believe that most hatred and phobia in this world does come from ignorance and does come from just not being educated. I think there's a lot of people who think that they you know, or they're exhibiting hatred or if not hatred, exhibiting like apathy, which depending on the context can be just as dangerous. And the thing that would change that would just be seeing it normalized. You know, they've grown up in this world where it's like, oh, this queer thing, it's dangerous, you know, it's this perversion, and they've just heard all this, and they haven't just seen two men holding hands outside, not hurting anyone, you know, a pair of mothers with kids who raise them the same fucking way you do, you know. They just it becomes this big scary thing in their minds because they don't understand it, and because that's how fear works is you know, we're afraid of what we don't understand, and it's terrifying when the thing we don't understand is just our fellow man, or you know, other people, you know, who just have an experience of the world that we don't have, and so it becomes scary to us for some reason. And I think, you know, and there are people who, you know, watching a show is not going to change that. My parents are unfortunately one of them. They have seen trace amounts of queer positivity in some media. I have not shown them Our Flag Means Death. I know better. You know, they've seen trace amounts of it and have responded very negatively, unfortunately. But there are also people who will see that and will be like, well, this doesn't seem so bad. And, you know, it's weird because I don't understand it, so it's a little weird. I'm not used to it, so it's a little weird, but maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's, you know, maybe they're not hurting anyone. You know, maybe they should be allowed to get married. Maybe they should be allowed to transition, you know. Because I know I definitely have my own internalized transphobia as well. Just talk on that for a minute, where, you know, I do have some kind of fucking weird belief in my head that what if testosterone turns me into something, you know, like, I don't know, I have this fear that somehow testosterone will make me into a different person, which it won't. I don't know why I have that fear, because it won't. That's not how that works. It's a hormone your body already creates, and my body actually already creates an excess of it due to other shit going on with it. So, like, you know, like, I don't know. Brains are stupid. What it comes down to is brains are stupid. Brains are stupid, and the people who use them have to make them smart by utilizing them correctly, because your brain's just dumb. Brains are just stupid. Brains tell you things that are incorrect all the fucking time. At least mine does. My brain says that next month I'm just gonna get kicked out of this apartment because of something stupid, and I guarantee you that's not gonna happen, because that's just doesn't make sense for any reason. Number one of them being I fucking signed a lease. So, you know, I don't know. Brains are dumb. Brains are dumb. And I think it's important to recognize sometimes your brain is dumb. And recognize that, you know, sometimes things you're scared of just aren't, you know, either aren't as scary as they seem or aren't, I hesitate to say aren't real, because I think there's a fine line between invalidating someone's experience, invalidating someone's fear, which I don't think invalidating someone's fear helps them cope with the fear. But also recognizing that, yes, there are things I'm afraid of that don't exist. That is also true. And it is not invalidating the fear to say that, but it's a tricky line, you know, it's a tricky line. I'm not coloring at all, I'm just fucking talking. I guess I can't multitask at all, actually. That's what this comes down to, I guess. I don't know. Oh. I've been dealing with a lot, and it's creating this fucking big ass fucking terror soup in my head. I don't know. Representation is very fucking important. It's very important. You know, how different would my life have been if when I was a little boy, I'd gotten to see, you know, a little trans boy on TV, you know? How different would my life have been, you know, if I had been able to recognize that, you know, MLM relationships were meaningful to me because it showed an aspect of my experience that I just at the time hadn't been able to recognize, but, you know. And it's also an interesting thing where I don't know how to explain this. I'm trying to explain some things that I need more time, and I need another video to talk about them specifically, but, you know, like one of the relationships that I was always really fascinated by in media growing up was, I loved Full Metal Alchemist a lot. I still love Full Metal Alchemist a lot. It's my favorite anime of all time. And I relate to both of the brothers a lot for a lot of reasons. And I didn't realize, you know, when I was younger, I thought that I identified with Winry, and that, you know, I liked their dynamic because I was putting myself in her shoes, and I didn't realize until I was older, much older, that it was the other way around. That I actually like girls, and I'm not a girl. I don't know. There's a lot of bits and pieces in this video that I'm talking about that I want to... They come together into a bigger whole than I'm able to verbalize at the moment. There are aspects of my experience that I'm still struggling to put into words. There's a lot of things I struggle to put into words. There's a lot of things I struggle to understand. I have this problem where I sound a lot smarter than I am. I'm actually I'm obtusely stupid. I'm very dumb. I, I'm a huge idiot. I don't understand a lot of shit. I'm very good at sounding like I understand more than I do. I'm also very good at stringing together the things I understand into something that is close to what I'm actually trying to say, but not actually what I'm trying to say, which is deeply frustrating. I don't know. I'm fucking crazy, man. I've been working more on my Narnia project a little bit, chipping away at it. And very much chipping away at it. You know, I've not made a lot of progress at all. But in that, I've been listening to the audiobooks. Oh, God. I don't know how many people here have read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or watched the movie, the Disney movie that came out a while ago. I always wanted to be Eustace, or not Eustace, Edmund. Eustace is also true. That's a different story, though. That's not that one. Or I should say, I always thought of myself as Eustace. But talking about that story, Edmund. I always wanted to be Edmund. And I didn't realize that at the time. It's I don't know. This is gonna sound weird to say. It's almost like I've had two simultaneous understandings of my existence, and that division was caused by my trans identity. That I had to try to understand my existence as a woman as a girl, because that's what the world told me I was. You know, everyone told me I was a girl. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. And so I've had this understanding of the world. I've had almost two separate understandings of the world trying to coexist at the same time. And I've explained this in therapy many times over the years. You know, it's called cognitive dissonance when you kind of simultaneously are holding two beliefs at the same time. Which I've done a lot of over the course of my lifetime. I've kind of had, you know, I've been overly aware that I have an understanding of myself in my head and that other people outside of me have a different understanding of me. And I've spent a lot of time and energy, you know, understanding those two different storylines of myself and trying to make them fit together when they don't. My own understanding of myself and other people's understanding of myself, of me, often don't fit, especially when I was younger. And, you know, I don't know. Even that doesn't feel like completely the right way to explain it. It's hard to put things into words. But the cognitive dissonance is something that I've talked a lot about in therapy over the years, and has been a very prevalent thing because I do attempt to hold simultaneous separate beliefs in my head at the same time, all the time. I mean, I was just talking about it a little bit earlier where it was like, I'm bisexual and also being queer is bad, you know, trying to hold both of those beliefs in both hands at the same time without letting go of either of them. Because, you know, internally I needed to be queer. I needed to have that part of myself, and I was holding that part of myself in a death grip. And also, I was trying to rationalize the world around me that was telling me that being queer was a sin, that being queer was wrong. And still, for many years, I tried to grasp those two separate beliefs very tightly. And I still do that in a lot of ways. Always trying to hold multiple understandings of myself, multiple understandings of the world at the same time, which I think has led to me having a deeper understanding of empathy, I think, because it is somewhat easier for me to see someone who has a very different experience from me and be like, yeah, that makes sense. We occupy the same world and we have completely different views of that world. That makes a lot of sense to me, which I think is the core of empathy, is just recognizing that other people have a different experience than you, and validating that, and feeling that, feeling their experience. I don't know. My brain is a confusing mess, and I feel like I don't understand it completely, and I don't know if I ever will. I also think that a lot of ways that I do understand it are incorrect, which is deeply frustrating. It makes me feel like I'm crazy, I think we all want to be understood. I think we all want to be able to break ourselves down into something palatable and consumable to the people in our lives, because there is something validating about being understood. It's a very basic statement to make, but everyone wants to be understood. And I think sometimes I make the job harder when I'm trying to make it easier. I don't know. And it's there's a trying to being able to recognize that also just won't happen with everybody. You will never be universally understood by everyone, no matter who you are, no matter how simple and straightforward your experience has been, which almost no one has that. You won't ever be understood by everyone. And that's a tough pill to swallow, I guess. And I think especially on the internet, it's hard to even be fully understood by one other person. How can you expect to do that to people who can't engage with you in real life? And yet, even saying that, I do feel like if somebody were to watch all of my videos and see all of the things I've made online, that they would still have a deeper understanding of me than the people in my personal life. Because I do think we can explain ourselves a lot more through what we make than through any other means, I think. I have this belief that when a person makes art, any kind of art, I do count YouTube videos as art. I think you have to have an artistic mind to make content on the internet. And it is a form of art if you choose to engage with it in that way. It can also be other things. I think it depends on, how you're seeing it, but to be at the baseline, I think, or when it comes down to it, I do think YouTube videos are art. I do. It takes creative energy, therefore it is art. You are trying to express yourself in a limited capacity using using a medium. That's art, you know? The medium just happens to be footage and editing software and whatever else you choose to use to make your YouTube videos. So that's my fucking devil's advocate, is that YouTube is art. But, you know, like, I have this belief that, you know, when you make art, any art someone creates, anything an artist makes, will have more truth about their experience than just the words they say to use to describe themselves, or hell, even just getting to know them outside of the art, you know, getting to know them in real life. You know, when you make art, you're almost fucking, you're almost fucking selling your soul a little bit, because you are showing pieces of yourself that you didn't even know you put in there. You know, if you look at someone's art, you will see things about them that they, you know, they probably didn't knowingly put in there, unless they're a master of what they do, and then that's part of how they engage with it, which I think all the best artists recognize, that they're bearing their souls when they make anything. But even, you know, even the amateur or clumsy or beginning artists, you know, you will see a truth of them if you look hard enough. You know, it's, you always put the truth of yourself into everything you make. And it might not be obvious immediately what that truth is from the outset. You know, but I do believe that. I think our art speaks louder about ourselves than we can. And that's why I think representation is so important. Because you're not just exposing a truth of yourself. The art you are attracted to as a consumer, I hate to use that word, but I don't know what other word to use right now. Consumer of art, I don't fucking know. Viewer, fucking whatever. There's a better word for it, and I can't think of it right now. You will be connected to the art that speaks about your truth as well, you know? So it's kind of this connection point between the artist and the, you know, I had a video on my deleted channel where I talked about the creator, the creation, and the witness, where I explained this much better, I think. You know, I don't know. Uh-oh, someone's not having a great time outside. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. This video had so much in it. Oh my god. It also looks like it's about to rain. I don't know. Representation is so important. And it's why I want to, you know, I keep saying this, I want to work on my Narnia project. That's very important to me. You know, to be able to see queer identities and other identities represented in that story, you know. I don't know, this was kind of a jumble of a video. Media is really important to me. Representation is very important in general, and also to me. And also, people are important to me. Human beings are important to me. I'm fascinated by human beings. I'm fascinated by what makes a person a person. I'm fascinated by the things in someone's life that turned them into that person. I'm fascinated by how people relate with themselves and with the world around them and with each other. And I hate feeling ostracized and isolated when the world is full of so many fascinating people, and it is full of, you know, I don't know. This is a dumb way to end this video, but I just, you know, I hope someday I can meet people that I feel as at home with as, you know, I did with my exes. You know, I miss them every day. And, you know, they really were the people that I felt the most connected with, that I could be the most myself with. And not to make this already super long video even longer, but it's been kind of devastating to not be able to find that kind of connection with anyone else, even in the form of a friend. Not in my personal life anyway. You know, my exes loved media the way I do. They like to engage with media the way I do. They taught me a lot about my own viewpoints of the world and the media I engage with. We met by watching Yuri on Ice. You know, we met because we all liked that show. And you know, I sit on this channel and I talk about things here that I would have talked about with them. A lot of the videos on here would have been late night conversations that we had on a random fucking Tuesday. And sometimes I wonder if I'm so broken, if I'm so detached from people's understanding of reality, if I'm so weird, if I'm so queer, that, you know, I won't ever be able to connect with anyone like that ever again. You know, I don't know. It was kind of a miracle I found them in the first place. As terrible as things have gone down since the breakup, and since COVID shattered a lot of the relationship, I am deeply fearful that I will never find anyone I can connect with in the same way, on the same level that I could connect with them. I just, you know, when I don't know. I interact with people, you know, even within the queer group, and it's like I feel like my experience of the world beyond just queerness is so different from theirs. You know, in a place where I'm supposed to feel accepted, I still feel very ostracized, and that's nobody's fault. They're not trying to do that. It's not people are trying to include me in things. It's more of a matter of when we're talking, when we're having conversations, I can't connect with what we're talking about, or I can't talk about the things that I find fascinating, or I can't relate to their experiences of certain things. You know, and I'm very aware that a romantic relationship is not the end all be all of human connection. I'm very aware of that. And that's not even all that I mean when I say finding someone, you know. Someday I do want to have an intimate relationship with someone again, you know. That is something that is very important to me in my life. That's something that's very important to me in my queer identity, is to have a queer relationship. It is very important to me to be able to fully realize all aspects of my identity. Which means, you know, having a relationship like that. And also, you know, I'd also like to have friends that I feel I can connect with more. You know, not feel so isolated. You know, my very best friend in the whole world, you know, when she moved away, it's hard to connect when you live on opposite sides of the globe and have just, you know, it's not that we don't still connect. We still talk. We love each other very deeply. She is my best friend, and will be that for the rest of my life. We've been through too much to ever be anything less to each other, to be quite frank. I deeply love her, and she deeply loves me, and our relationship is extremely important to me. And also, there is just the reality that much distance, you know, only being able to call at dusk or dawn when the sun happens to be up for both of us. You know, that interferes with the quality of a relationship, whether, you know, distance does interfere with a relationship. I don't think it has to end a relationship. I don't think it has to mean that relationship is invalid, or no longer real. But it does impact it, right? And it's very isolating that I can't just. I mean, it's tough that I can't, you know, anymore. I can't just. You know, when she lived here, I used to be able to just go over to her house and I'd be there for fucking 12 hours, and God, we would talk the whole fucking time. Oh my God. we talked so much. Like, even now when we call, like, I say it's like, okay, while the sun is up for both of us, the sun goes down for one of us at some point, we're still talking. Like, it's still like 5 or 6 hour conversations. We can just talk about fucking anything. So, you know, she's very dear to me, and I don't mean to discount or discredit our relationship when I say that I'm feeling lonely and isolated. But, you know, I don't know. My partners were my entire fucking world for a very long time. They were my entire fucking world for 5 years. And we could just talk about fucking anything, man. I expanded so much of my view of the world through them. And my view of myself, and, you know, I don't know. And it terrifies me that I'm somehow too weird or too fucked up, too broken, too queer to ever find something like that again, where just someone that I can share everything with, and who can share everything with me, and who can understand the way I see the world and not think of me I don't know, not think I'm crazy or something. I don't know. I'm talking way too long. This video is way too fucking long, and there's just a million goddamn things I was talking about. All on a bad hair day. That's great. I love that for me. I love that for me, that I get to watch this back and be like, God, I looked so fucking terrible. Why do I even care about that? God, that's so fucking shallow. Why do I fucking care? Why do I care? Why do I care? Why do I care? I don't know. I didn't color my picture very much. I just talked. Because apparently I can't color and talk at the same time. Apparently. I also just don't want to stop recording because I feel better when I'm recording. I feel less alone. I feel like I'm talking to someone. I feel like I'm talking to you. Blech. And I will say that while I'm trying to navigate feelings of loneliness and isolation and ostracization, you know, this has literally saved my life. Like, being able to make videos and talk to you has saved my life in a lot of ways. And that is not an exaggeration or hyperbole in any way at all. It really is truly not. So, yeah. I should end it. I don't even know how fucking long I've been going. I was not paying any attention to the time. There are children having a lot of fun outside. I don't know if that's picking up on the mic at all. But apparently the distress of whatever that child was going through is over. And they're now having fun. I don't know. I don't want to stop filming. I never want to stop filming because, I don't know, I feel like a person. And that's important. Whether people watch this or not, it's important. Also, stop watching my videos. God, why are you guys watching my videos? Why are you doing that? Please, get out of my house. I don't know. God. Oh, God. I have been in so much... Okay, I'm ending this soon, but I have been in so much pain recently. I fucked up my shoulder somehow. I'm not sure how. This one. The shoulder's all fucked up. I'm in so much pain. And I still can't take my pain medicine. And I'm also still withdrawing from that. So that's definitely causing some of the distress at play here, because it takes a few weeks before that's fully out of your system. So there's also that at play. I also feel terrible because of that. And that I do have to recognize that is also partially why I'm fucking freaking out about everything and feeling miserable. Okay. Alright. Fucking shut the fuck up, David. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. If you actually stayed this long, congratulations. You're my favorite person for today. And if you didn't, you're not here. So, there's that. Okay. If I finish coloring this picture, I will post that. I think. Maybe. Possibly. I don't know. Will YouTube get mad at me for fucking shirtless trans lady? Will YouTube get mad at me for that? I'm not sure. Possibly. I don't know. Okay. Anyway. You know the drill. Take care of yourselves for me. All right? Bye.